It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
There just seems to be a philosophical difference, I feel like, between the way most people think about offensive line and the way they are. And
what do you mean?
We will see whether this is arrogance or whether this is, well-founded confidence. It very much feels like they think Eric Bieniemy can just make this offensive line work. They are not super talented. They are not.
Well, to be
they're not,
fair, they are talented, but they haven't lived up to the talent at all spots, right? Like Cosme, a very talented guy.
sure.
Sadiq
Okay.
Charles, very
Cosme's
talented
the
guy.
one. He's a second.
And I would say Sadiq Charles also. When you look at him on paper and look at his height, weight,
Sure, but
speed,
what round draft pick was he?
I think it was a
Fourth?
third round pick, third or fourth, something like that. Yeah.
So there's no first rounders on this.
Correct.
Line.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's no studs. There's no Trent Williams. There's no some of the guys that they've had.
Brennan Sheriff, right?
Some of the guys they've had here. Some of the guys they've had in Kansas City. There's not the guys that they have in Philly. Like the talent level is not high.
Yeah.
They're all NFL players, but that's kind of the thing. They're all just maybe somewhere between good. Cosme could be pretty good. Cosme was a second rounder. Somewhere between pretty good to like solid NFL players. And it seems like they think the scheme, the play calling, the coaching of Eric Bieniemy and his staff can elevate them to a level. And by the way, a different approach to quarterback play, let's call it, getting the ball out quickly, having someone who's a little bit more mobile back there. Obviously Taylor was mobile, but Sam, they're going to actually run. And that threat changes how defenses rush. So I just feel like there is not where a lot of people, I think, went into the offseason, whether this is media type evaluators, us included, fans, whatever, NFL observers, saying they need to add talent to the offensive line.
Yeah.
They certainly got a little bit better position by position. There is a major question at left guard. I would say center is still kind of a pretty big question. I mean, Nick Gates hasn't played a lot of center in his career. He hasn't played a lot in his career period because of injuries. And, Cosme hasn't been able to stay healthy. Like there's still a lot of legitimate questions about that offensive line in terms of the talent, but they seem to be okay with that. And so I'm forgetting what you said that prompted that thought for me, but it does seem, because you were like Logan Paulsen GM would do it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
That seems to be a part of the calculation, is that they just need like NFL average caliber football players, and the scheme and everything else around it will do the rest.
Well, I'm pretty confident that the scheme will elevate that group. I think when you look at how Wiley was used in Cincinnati, he's a good player there, and it's not, and he's not in this
Kansas City,
what I say, doesn't
Cincinnati.
Matter. Yeah. Wiley. And so, it's not going to be kind of put in this, Air Coryell, 7-step drop offense where he's got to win these really tough matchups down and down out. And so I believe the scheme will elevate those guys. I think Cosme will play better again, because they're going to be leveraged less. Like when you go back and watch some of the past stuff they did last year, it was a very high leverage situation oftentimes. And I think Wiley will be good. I think Cosme's got to develop. I feel pretty confident about Gates after watching him in the spring. Left guard, like you said, still a question mark. And then obviously left tackle. And I think he'll play better too. Leno will play better because of the scheme. I think we're kind of missing the main point, where when you say looking at draft capital and draft allocation, was Ricky Stromberg and was Braden Daniels the right selection, given your philosophy? And so that's the thing that I keep kind of hemming and hawing about, is because like I love my evaluation of Stromberg, but like you said, he's a third round pick. Like, where does he fit? And again, if you're drafting off your board and he's the best guy on your board, I'm totally fine with that. Like, you got to trust your evaluation. Is my evaluation exactly the same as yours? No. But then I go and I say, Braden Daniels, like they see him as a tackle. That's what they've said. And when I look at my own evaluation, like, I don't know if I'm as confident as they are that he can play tackle. Like, I think he's going to be, to me, he reminds me a lot of Sadiq. He's got high athletic upside, technically very raw, and probably plays guard in the NFL, right? So you've done a good job of getting guys that theoretically could have play multiple positions, but unfortunately you end up with guys that can only play guard. Like Chris Paul, I think, is a great example. Sadiq's a great example. Like if he had to play tackle in a game, if either one of those guys had to play tackle in a game, you'd be a little nervous about it, right? Like they said that last year when he played against Dallas. They were like,
Yeah.
he's our third tackle. Like we don't feel great about it. There's a reason he's your third tackle. It's because his body type and his skill set lends itself more to guard. So I think that's the thing that is a little bit little confusing about the whole process is like you've prioritized position flex by getting tackles that can play guard. But at some point you need to say we need to solidify this group with guys that can play tackle at a high level too, right? And I think they've done a good job with that. I think Wiley fits that mold to a certain extent. I think Leno fits that mold to a certain extent. I think Korn fits that mold. But in terms of areas that needed depth and development, I would have thought they would have kind of prioritized maybe tackle with one of those picks, with the third round pick or the fourth round pick. And that's not an indictment of either one of those players. It's just in terms of fit and helping the roster, like they have a lot of guards on the team, And so that's the thing that I'm kind of like, well, does he move the needle for you at guard? And then, Ron, I have a lot of respect for Ron, but he comes out and says Braden Daniels not in the guard competition. And it's like, so he's going to basically be inactive for the whole season because he's not playing tackle for you this year. So that's the thing that I kind of get a little bit. And again, I'm not in the room. I'm not in the evaluation. These are just thoughts that I have regarding those decisions specifically. And I have a ton of respect for Ron, a ton of respect for the organization. And they have a vision, which I respect, but sometimes it doesn't always line up in my mind, I guess.
Sure. So here's the way I'll put it, because you've now touched on the part that drives me nuts and is, I would say, more my lane, bigger picture type of stuff than, you who sits down and watches the tape and like really has an opinion on Braden Daniels. I could watch tape for hours of that guy and think, I don't know, what did Logan think?
Yeah.
I'm not an offensive line evaluator, and I don't pretend to be. What I am is someone who can look at a big picture and be like, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And there's just an inefficiency in it. Why are you drafting in the third and fourth round when you could be getting starters, or at least guys who are going to be parts of rotations and impact you this season? Why are you drafting backups and inactive players in the fourth and especially the third round? If things go well this year, Ricky Stromberg doesn't play. And you're not even giving him a chance. And like, that's the thing. If ultimately you draft him and Nick Gates is able to stay healthy and he is just better, okay, like that's a great problem to have. Hey, this guy's good. Sweet. He beat out our rookie. Ricky. Keep getting better. And in the future, you're going to play for us. But for right now, like Nick's better than you. He's got experience. He's more prepared. And he's going to start for us at center, and you're going to be the backup, or you're going to be inactive. And maybe eventually you get onto the active roster. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But when you come into training camp or come into OTAs and he's starting to work with the fours and the threes behind guys who have been in the league and been around, and what they are, and what they are is like fine at best, with all due respect to like Tyler Larson and was it Noah Laufenberg, who, by the way, Noah Laufenberg is a large human.
Big man.
That is a big man. I kept going, who is 74? That is a giant.
He's a tall fellow, yeah.
Yeah, tall, wide, great,
Yep.
big offensive lineman. But like, he's played a little bit and it hadn't gone great. Yep. So if you're not giving reps to a rookie who you took in the third round over Noah, all due respect to Noah Laufenberg, as explained, large man, Noah, I mean no harm, please. I mean no harm. And Tyler Larson,
it's just draft equity. You've invested in that position,
right?
With a not inconsequential piece. And so I've been a part of teams. They draft a tight end. I know the score, man. Like, and so it's a little surprising that they haven't abided by that. And I think Ricky is a guy that could push for starting minutes. Probably not this year, but at some point in the future. He's a good football player, right? The thing is, like, that is, I think, probably more to your point is, were there guys that were more impactful? Now, it's impossible to know because draft evaluation's tough and everyone has a little different opinion. And I know that they were looking at offensive linemen earlier and that fell through or whatever, right? And that happens. But and they felt like they needed to address the need. But I think the other thing is, like, like you said, like, are they going to play football for you this year?
Are you going to give them a chance?
Ricky,
like, Are you
Probably
going to
not.
legitimately give them a chance to earn snaps on the field, which isn't going to happen practicing with the force?
Yeah, and I think like Ricky of the two, Ricky has the most talent potential to play this year. But Braden, like I said, there's a lot of athletic upside, a lot of things to be excited about with him. But like based on what we've seen in OTAs and based on his college film, he's not going to play for you this year. Like he's not. And so he's going to be one of your 53 guys that are active on game day because you don't want to lose him, and he's going to be not playing football for you. And so I think that's the thing that is, again, like to your point, it's tough to negotiate that for a team. Now, I think when you take a big step back and say like maybe the roster is healthy enough to tolerate kind of a youth development program. And what I mean by that is you look at the defense, and I don't know where you would draft anybody, maybe linebacker. I don't know. But obviously,
That's the one position that I was thinking of, and that's the point I would make next is like they don't need any more corners. Like they're
yeah,
already pretty deep there.
receiver,
And
no,
especially
tight
like
end,
third
no.
round. Yeah.
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 Running back, no. Like and so like where would you go? And linebacker is a position in this last draft, especially, that was tough. It was a tough position to evaluate. It was a tough to find a position where guys. So like I think I told you this when I'm doing my draft stuff, where I just go yes or no for first pass, right? Can he play in the NFL? Yes or no? And it was hard to find guys that I would give a yes to, just to give you some context. So I know that a lot of those guys went earlier in the round, the guys that were kind of tweener high upside players. And so maybe they were like, there's nobody here that we think can do it. So why am I going to waste a pick in that area just for the position, on a position that's been devalued by the NFL? But I do look and I say, well, that's the other crazy thing is they did a great job with UDFAs getting 4 receivers that look good enough that they can make the squad. So it's tough. And the thing that sticks out to me, I think I mentioned this to you, Craig, is like there were other players around that position that I had a higher draft grade on, and I don't have access to the medical. And so that's why that guys that I felt like were emphatically yes in terms of how they could contribute and compete for a roster spot. And they went in a different direction. Again, like Ricky was like my fourth graded center, and all the other centers that I had ahead of him were gone. So like I like that's good value there. But for this team in this
Sure.
roster, is there a different way you could have gone?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say too is like they took Rodriguez and KJ Henry later because they have
Mhm.
gotten better players at those positions. And we'd have
Yeah.
to go back and look at the board, and even us doing that, the reason we're not going to do it is because we don't know.
Yeah. Like
We don't know what
what
their
they're and it's
evaluations were,
yeah.
and for all we know, they got steals that KJ Henry in the 5th is going to wind up being a better NFL football player than who they would have taken in the 3rd. So
Yeah.
I mean, we're now in this post draft, like we'll see kind of thing,
Yeah.
and that's kind of why I'm like, he's practicing with the 4s. He's
Yeah.
okay. Ooh, he's moved up to the 3s. I think Stromberg by the end of OTAs did get a couple reps with the 2s, if I'm not mistaken. So
Right.
maybe it's just kind of the rookie formality, and we're making a little bit too much out of it. And we'll see what happens when he gets to training camp. But if you had asked me the day after the draft, and we probably talked about it this way on the podcast immediately after the draft, is Ricky Stromberg their starting center? I would have said, yeah, probably. Like, that's why
Yeah.
you drafted him in the 3rd round. Excellent. Good draft pick. Good job. But
Yeah.
if he's not, and he's not even going to legitimately get a chance to compete for it, that changes how I view the use of that asset, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm getting ready for the radio show where I'm going to talk a lot about Bradley Beal and asset management, right? But
Yeah.
like this is the game in the salary cap era of this sport and other sports, is that you have to manage your assets well. And whether that is trading a player who you're not going to re-sign and recouping some value, if that value is greater than the compensatory pick, a lot of the conversations we could be having about Chase Young or Montez Sweat if this season goes sideways, whether it's using draft picks on the right type of guys who are going to contribute in the right ways for your roster. You just can't be inefficient. And I just feel like that's my kind of gripe with it, is those picks felt inefficient.
Mhm.
If they have the roster depth to deal with that, and that is also like a way to build, right? You build it
Yeah.
up enough that you can take some of those risks and maybe say, hey, Daniels is not going to play for us right now, but we feel like in 2 years he could be a really good player.
Yeah.
Okay. If that's your timeline and you feel good about every other position, but you just better have everything else shored up. And
And my and my
that's the thing
question
where
to
I think we're
you
a little unconvinced.
and my question to you would be like, what are the odds that he's gonna reach that he's gonna be like have that ability to be your starter or whatever it is, like that's the thing. It's like I don't know. I don't want to get too sidetracked there, but it's that what if question that you pose there, I think is really compelling, because it's like, yeah, like that'd be great if he turns into this guy, but you're counting on a ton of development from a guy who's
Right.
very raw. And again, there are flashes with Daniel's film, and I think he has the physical capability of being a starting caliber player. I just think it's going to be a guard. And I think
Yeah.
Stromberg is a guy that I like a lot. He's close to contributing to an NFL roster, but he's going to sit for a year. And again, like, would you have been better served like drafting a guy that was more ready or whatever? And it's an unknowable question right now, and we'll know in a couple of years. But I think that's why that feels a little funky to a lot of fans and a lot of guys in the media too.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll add too is, especially at the offensive line position, yes, you're in on field goal protect, but like
Yeah,
there's not a lot of special teams value in the meantime.
yeah,
And so you wind up being inactive and like literally being, respectfully a zero because you're not playing
yeah.
the entire year, plus whatever you add on the practice field, which can be valuable. But it's not like if you miss on a safety, he's Jeremy
Playing
Reeves.
teams. He's
And
playing
yeah,
teams.
and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden we accidentally, we missed on our safety, or maybe they knew he was going to be a teams guy, but like he's not good enough to play safety down in, down out for many years of his career, but he's an all pro special teamer. So he's contributing in a very meaningful way. You don't get that on offensive line. And so that's another, kind of facet to this argument that I think should be considered.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to finish up. Like, I think I've met both those guys, Braden Daniels and Ricky
Yeah.
Stromberg. They're awesome kids. I think they're good football players. We're just talking about, was that the right decision for them? Not are those guys bad football players? I'm not saying that. Got a lot of respect for them and what they're doing is tough. But does this roster have the depth to basically redshirt two players and a third or fourth round pick for the year? And
Yeah.
I don't know if they do or not, and we'll find
Yeah.
out soon enough.
Yeah, and I'll say this. We'll finish up on a positive note, if you will. To the team's credit, someone's got to be inactive.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
typically it is going to be later offensive linemen. If those are talented futures projects, if you will, then okay, someone's got to be. But I think the reality is we know that the idea that like, oh, these guys are going to be inactive the whole year, we don't need those roster spots, is wishful thinking with injuries in the NFL, where guys are going to have to step up because, guys in front of them go down. And how do you have the depth to fill those spots? And that's really the ultimate question that we're asking, to which we'll find out the answer as the
Right.
year goes. Coming up on the next podcast, I do believe we're going to have James Smith-Williams on the show. He's got
Nice.
an awesome football camp coming up this summer. We'll talk to him about that. And of course, all of the playing things, do a little biography stuff with him, some coaches and mentors that were impactful along his journey. I've gotten to know James pretty well over the last couple of years. I know you've worked with him, so that should be a really, really fun chat. Looking forward to having James on the show. Other than that, we're working on some other cool stuff for the summer, so make sure you're subscribed, and then training camp will be here before we know it. If you liked this episode and you're watching it on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, as the kids say, and we will see you next time here on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do
He's
it.
Very, very smart.